I didn't know him, didn't know anything about him.
Yeah.
No, did I?
Okay. She just gave you a thumbs
He
up.
thumbs up, the clock's
Yeah.
up now. I'm gonna go with Pam. Good morning. Let's call the meeting to order, please. Today is Tuesday, July 24th. We're here at the Civic Center for our regular monthly meeting. We'll stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Albrecht?
Here.
Mayor Cassie?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
Here.
Mr. Putnam?
All right, thank you. I don't have anything at this time. Bill, you have anything?
No.
Linda?
No.
No.
No council comments? All right, citizens' comments?
Lisa Logan, 402 Maryland. For years, city officials, primarily from the council table, have told the public that Mexico Beach does not have rip currents off of its coast. Yesterday, we had 2 people swept out from a rip current, and one of them tragically died. Is the city going to change its stance on the fact that we do not have rip currents?
Is that we don't traditionally have rip currents. We sure don't.
So what happened?
There are conditions that might exist where you do have them, but traditionally, we don't have any rip current issues.
So that was just a fluke?
Well, I don't know the conditions of the swimmers. I don't know I don't know those conditions. You asked, are we going to change our position? All I said was that we have not here and have rip current issues.
Thank you.
If I could, that was going to be part of my administrator's report. We did have a death yesterday due to a rip current. 2 individuals were swept out. One saved the other. The other one didn't make it. We've seen these things in times past. So the question from the family was to us, why do we not have a flag system in Mexico Beach? The comment in return was, well, we tend to follow what Bay County does, which is okay, but there's no flags to tell people that. As long as things happen and nobody gets hurt, no harm, no foul. But now that we have a death directly related to a riptide, is it time we consider doing something different? That's an open-ended question for the council's consideration.
Okay.
We want to talk about this now?
Well, it's not really citizens' comments. We want to make it a miscellaneous item. We can do that, but we don't need to. Want to bring it up then? Or if you want to talk about it now? I mean,
Miscellaneous.
normally you would not do that at this time.
Right, do it miscellaneous.
All right. Any other citizens' comments? Okay, thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. One meeting from earlier this month. Do I have have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion second. Any corrections, additions? Any opposition to the consent agenda? Let the record reflect 4-0. Next is employee introduction.
If we could, everyone who doesn't know it probably knows it now that Mary Leonard's going to be retiring at the end of this year. And so that put us in a precarious position in that she is our operator in a responsible charge of our water and sewer. And she is licensed to have that position. We're in vast need of someone with the qualifications. We went out to see what kind of interest there was, and thank the Lord, we found Mr. Thomas Wilson. And you can see the gentleman standing up there. So we need to welcome him as a Class A, is it?
Yes, sir.
Water operator. And we are darn proud to have you. And you saved our bacon. And we appreciate you being on board.
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
Now it's gonna go over his head now.
No, it ain't. I gotta get back in the truck with you anyway. Like,
One thing we haven't discussed, though, I'm not so sure you look as good in shorts as what Leonard does.
you ain't gonna see me in shorts.
I needed that.
You won't see me in shorts, don't worry about that.
We're better off. Well, thank you and welcome aboard.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Jeff, or,
Yep.
okay,
Good morning.
that's out of habit, not out of disrespect.
Understood. Don't really have anything on project updates this time. We did prepare a memo in cost estimate that each of you have a copy of, talking about the filling of the moat at Parker Park. The memo itself kind of gives a little bit of a background on how this came about, talks about the permitting that's going to be required, gets into timelines, possible mitigation cost for impacts, discusses actual fill volumes that would be required to fill the moat, construction sequences, and then gets into actual cost. And based on the numbers that we put together, construction, design, and permitting is estimated to run around $287,000. And then on
Before
top,
we even fill anything in.
no, that would be filling it in. That would be importing the fill to actually bring it up to grade so that it's level with the rest of Parker Park. What that number doesn't include are application fees for permits, which should be pretty minor, especially compared to $287,000. But the other significant cost that's not included in there is the mitigation cost. In our section in the memo under mitigation, it talks about current credits are about $80,000 an acre, and that's for a pristine wetland. Now, based on the size of the wetland and the grade of the wetland, that number can come down. So if a half acre wetland that's pristine, the cost would be $40,000. On the back of the memo and the cost estimate, there's a little aerial photograph there with a line indicating the limits of what we have previously talked about filling. That's certainly not a permanent line, and that can be adjusted one way or the other. But if you're out there on site, that's about where the pine tree is on 98, looking straight across.
So this is what the dollar figure relates to.
Correct. We took that area, calculated the volumes to get the amount of fill that we anticipate would be needed to bring it up to grade, and then added in some other costs for different construction techniques that would be needed, installation of a cofferdam, installation of erosion control measures, things of that nature. So
So to fill a hole, it's gonna cost us $287,000
to fill a hole that we once dug,
that we dug
it
ourselves.
would cost in the neighborhood of $300,000.
And this is thanks to the federal government, I suppose.
Federal government and states in there as well. There's two different reviewing agencies for wetland impacts. One is DEP, and they consider the limits of impact from top of bank to top of bank. So that's about a half acre. The Army Corps of Engineers considers areas that meet the three criteria: the vegetation, the hydric soils, and hydrology. That's going to be closer to the water. We're outside of a mitigation bank service area, so DEP would have to allow us, if we were just going to stroke a check for 40 grand for mitigation, they would have to sign off on that. And then the Corps doesn't always follow what DEP does on your mitigation cost, so there still might be some mitigation, like the recreation of habitat right there around the side of Parker Park might still be required. So this information is based on the conversations that we had. The mayor and I met with DEP months back. We met with Army Corps. And this is just kind of a summation of those meetings and of our experiences dealing with everybody. So,
Okay. Questions for Jed?
I guess the last thing to talk about is, on the timelines, we estimated permitting would take about 9 to 12 months. The one caveat with that is that once you go to the Corps, they touch base with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and National Marine Fisheries. And if it's, I think we've talked about this term before, essential fish habitat, the National Marine Fisheries have up to 18 months just to respond to the submittal. Not to issue an approval, but just to get back with you and ask more questions. But even with that timeline, we think it would take about 9 to 12 months to permit it. And it's something that's certainly permittable, but before we go too far down that road, we wanted to, based on the previous discussions, make sure we had a pretty good idea of the overall lift.
So once we get started with this, would we have to do the whole plan? Or can we do it a little bit at a time?
You could phase it. The cost would go up, because every time you have to go down there to dewater, you're gonna have to install some kind of either earthen dam or temporary sheet pile wall so you can actually pump the water out of there, so you can excavate, put good soils back in so you can meet your compaction.
We have to excavate?
Well, anytime you have soils, especially at the tail end of a water body like that doesn't get a good flush, you have just the deposit of sediments over time, organics, and it just creates a muck. And from our previous soil exploration out there, the soils aren't great to begin with. So we estimated digging down an extra 5 feet below the bottom of the canal, getting that out, and starting with good clean fill at that point.
No, I don't want to be. What difference would that make? Seriously. Help clarify this for me. I mean, if you're
As far as over
if you're gonna
excavating?
fill it with fill, and it's 5 feet deep now, so we're gonna fill it down to 10 feet because we're gonna dig up 5 feet to refill it.
It's just like having a good foundation on anything. One of the reasons we couldn't put a building, well, one of the reasons it was recommended against putting a building at Parker Park was because the soils were in such bad shape.
Right.
You would need to actually get the bearing that you would need per the numbers, the calculations, you would need some pretty deep piles.
Right.
Whereas typically elsewhere around the city, the soils are good enough where you can just do a shallow foundation, a typical concrete pad that you're used to. Maybe if we got into it, maybe we wouldn't have to excavate down 5 feet, but I think it would be better on the front end to know that you might need to do that to make sure you get the compaction you need. The last thing you want to do is build it up on the soils that aren't good, and all of a sudden it just starts to slough off into the moat, and you create a perpetual maintenance issue.
Okay.
So is it possible to build the earthen dam and dry this, pump all the water out, and let it sit there a while?
It's
and
possible.
See if it improves.
It's possible, sure. But I mean, even after it's below the water table, so even after you pump it
Yeah.
out and dry it,
It may get water in it.
correct. So,
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Is that all we got?
I think so. Beach restoration, we've resubmitted to DEP their request for additional information, their RAI. So we're back into DEP. We are still waiting to hear from Army Corps. So,
Beach restoration project, then, is it, are we then not looking at October?
the Corps has all the documentation they need to make an approval. We just have not heard back from them yet. They're aware of the hopeful timelines. Previous conversations, they've been amenable to that, but we just haven't heard anything from them right now. So,
Well, how will we, I mean, we only have a window to operate in.
correct. It's,
So do we call them, or do we say?
we try to stay in touch with them. There's one guy that oversees the entire area, and
Could you put that on the report?
typically when we provide our project updates at the first meeting of the month, it's the top item listed on there. But yeah, we'll certainly keep
Well, I
that.
meant just in terms of hadn't heard back from them, try to give us a little expanded.
Sure.
I mean, we put a lot of time, effort, money into this thing.
Yes, sir.
To not hear back from them is, I think we'd all appreciate a little more than that.
Sure, understood.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next, second reading of ordinance 698. Do I have a motion to read the title on?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any opposition to reading? Mr. Clerk?
Ordinance number 698, an ordinance of the City of Mexico Beach, Florida, amending section 7.10.01 of the Land Development Regulations to delete the residency requirement for the Code Enforcement Special Master, providing for codification, conflict, severability, and an effective date.
Motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any questions? Call roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Albright?
Yes.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's CDC lease.
Your Honor, our attorney has prepared the CDC lease, and it requires, in his opinion, an ordinance. So the ordinance was presented for your review, even though it wasn't in the packet because we didn't get it until late Thursday night. But nonetheless, the intent is not to have a first reading today. The intent is to get it out there for your review, both the ordinance and the lease, so that at the first meeting in August, we can get the first reading and the second reading in September. That way, that happens well before the October 1 deadline, which is the beginning of our budget as well as theirs. The CDC lease has very little changes from the previous one. The biggest one is the fact that the $250 per month stays as is, because what was going on is the CDC has taken more responsibility for the maintenance of the grounds around them. And so then that's a good trade-off, we feel, that's less that Philip and his folks have to do, and CDC will pick up that responsibility.
So they're going to take total responsibility for the grounds?
Correct.
In the ordinance, again, we've never had an ordinance, or have we?
I'm not aware that 15 years ago we did an ordinance, but our charter requires when you lease property, you have to do it by ordinance.
All right, so this is more informational then. That's going to be coming to us, and that'll be on our next.
First reading in August, yes, sir.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. All right, number 2.
We just passed the ordinance about the relaxing of the residential requirement for the special master. Clayton Studstill did say that should that happen, he would be more than pleased to continue serving as the special master for the City of Mexico Beach. The appointment by ordinance is for 2 years, and so I'd like to recommend to the City Council, if you could please, recommend that Clayton Studstill be reappointed for another 2-year term.
Okay, is that an action item?
I think it should be, please.
Okay. Recommendation that we appoint Clayton Studstill as our special master for another 2-year term. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
So when will he become official? When will he start? Tomorrow morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Basically?
He's
tomorrow morning?
appointed, he's good to go.
Okay.
Give him a shirt.
All right, number 3.
This is considering the land purchase from the St. Joe Company. St. Joe Company, thanks to the mayor's contact with them, has agreed to sell us 5 acres of land, which is just north of our current Public Works building. In order to get that done, we have to approve a sale agreement with the St. Joe Company at today's meeting. Once that is signed, the last party, then the city has 60 days to complete a survey of the property. Once a survey is received by the seller, they have 15 days to provide the title commitment. Once the title commitment is provided, there are 10 days for any objections. And then once that due diligence period is over, we have 30 days to close. The purchase price at $10,000 per acre, which would be $50,000. We have to bear the cost of a lot of the closing costs. And the question about how it will be funded is the sale of 2 properties at La La Lane that we now have. And once we get done with this, I'd like to bring up something that wasn't available for your packet as well, which is the La La Lane properties. But at this particular time, I'd like the council to consider approving the real estate purchase agreement.
Could you expand on the closing? I mean, I read this, but, and I saw Nick's comment about it in one of his reports, but what is it that we're being asked to pay for in the closing documents that is considered to be out of, or excessive, according to Nick?
Well, because this is part of a large chunk of property, normally the survey would have been done by now. And so it's our responsibility to get the survey done. That's not a normal
You're talking
thing.
about to carve out the 5 acres?
The 5 acres, yes, sir.
What would that, maybe I missed it, what was the cost of the survey?
The cost of the survey is not included in these documents, but I can tell you it's less than $1,000. That's the estimate that I've
Because
gotten.
the closing costs as outlined are fairly routine in terms of who pays for what,
Mhm.
or what I saw. So that's the
The unusual
extra.
part, correct.
Okay, we have a request to go ahead and approve the land purchase of 5 acres from St. Joe Company. First of all, do I have a motion?
I have a question. So what are we gonna do with the 5 acres?
We're going to use that for storage for the Public Works Department. We don't have a very large footprint around the water towers and the buildings and everything. This will give us some additional space for items that we need.
Okay, so we have to go in and clear it and prepare it for all that.
Correct,
We can do all that in-house.
right. One more thing we need to do as well, in addition to the survey, is get an environmental assessment as well.
Oh, yeah, don't want to forget that.
Exactly.
I'll make a motion to approve purchase.
Second.
Have a motion, second, discussion? Anyone here today have a comment or a question? Yes, ma'am.
Will the radio tower be located there?
No.
Okay, motion second, any other comments from the table? And are you going to, prior to us voting, are you going to, if I heard you right, we're gonna discuss how we're gonna pay for it?
That's the next step, yes, sir.
All right, Call the roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Okay?
In addition to that, and like I said, the next question is how to pay for that. We do have 2 parcels of property on La La Lane that used to be an old water well site. We haven't used that in a number of years, and we don't anticipate ever using it again, so that's property that's just sitting there. So I've already taken the steps to get an appraisal done. We don't have it back yet, but that's in the process. Because before we unload this property, we got to have some guesstimate as to what the cost of the work is. Once we get that back, we'll proceed on. But in this particular item, whenever we dispose of property, you need to pass an ordinance that the city no longer has a need for the property. And again, I'm not asking that this be approved tonight, but this is just presented on the screen for your consideration for the next meeting. So you'll get this well in advance of the next meeting for your review. But this is one of the things we have to go through to take care of that. Remember, we had to pass an ordinance when we did the Tranquil Harbor thing where the old boat ramp used to be. Once we get done with passing the ordinance and get the appraisal back, we'll advertise it for sale. And then we'll accept closed bids at that point. So the process is moving forward to get this thing done.
So that'll be on our August meeting.
Correct.
Okay? All right. 19 budget.
From our budget meeting last week, everything we talked about putting in, I've put in adjusting the numbers since that meeting. The retirement number has been published of what the retirement rates will be changing, and also the state revenue sharing number was released, and a slight modification was made to the local government gas tax by the state. So everything that has changed is highlighted in the packet. The reason almost everything is highlighted is simply because of the retirement change. The big discussion was going to be, are we going to be able to keep the mill flat? Was it going to have to raise? What were we going to have to do with the additions that were made? On the 3 police squad cars, I transferred in $15,000 from the vehicle replacement fund and also $15,000 from the police impact fee fund, making the net cost to the general fund of $60,000 instead of $90,000. By doing this, we were able to change our millage rate from the 3.51 that we were down to 5.351 down to 5.327. Other than that, any questions? I'm ready to roll. It's not a large decrease, but it is a decrease.
Any decrease is a good decrease.
Mm-hmm. Any questions from the table? Any questions from the citizens? Yes, sir.
Does this budget still include the inmate program?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it does.
I spoke about this before, and I just want to reiterate that I oppose the budget if it included $90-some thousand to bring prisoners into our town. As I said before, we've tried this in the past. I haven't, and near as I can determine, it was unsuccessful. I haven't been able to get an answer as to what these people are going to do. I've asked some of what work is not being done now that will be accomplished with prisoner labor, and I don't know the answer to that. I happened to be down at the library in Port St. Joe, and they had a couple of days ago, and they had their prisoner gang out there working. And I could kind of envision it here in Mexico Beach, and from my standpoint, it wasn't a very pretty picture. So I just want to reiterate my opposition, strong opposition, to spending $90,000 to bring prisoners into our town. Questions? Thank you.
On the budget, When does this have to be submitted to?
Thursday, we have to submit the tentative millage rate. We can always go down from the tentative rate. We cannot go up. Our first public hearings will be the 10th of September, and the 24th will be the final adoption. I believe that's my date. So at this meeting, I'm asking that they set a tentative millage so I can certify that to be put on the trim notice.
And the tentative millage is 5.327.
Correct.
All right, Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we set tentative millage at 5.327.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion. Any comment from our citizens? Call the roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
All right. Miscellaneous?
I'd like to bring up something out of curiosity, if I might. Just, it occurred to me as I was looking at the aerial that Mr. Burton provided us for the park, the fill-in's really a very small area. I wonder if and I have no idea that if the property is even available, but if for the kind of money there, I would wonder if we could purchase that island or whatever it is out in the middle of the moat to be used for parking, and possibly put in a bridge then for walking into the park for the same cost as filling that small area in. And I wonder if we would accomplish actually more by doing that. Just throw out for a thought.
Well, I think we need to think of all the possibilities. As I would expect it to cost $250,000 to satisfy the federal government.
It's a federal government.
It's nuts.
So what would be our first step to inquire about this, the island? You know, years ago, I heard rumors that it was available for some kind of rent, whatever. And again, that's a rumor, have no,
One time it came up, I think when I was on the zoning board for a small RV park or something back there.
I think one of the problems we have at Parker Park is parking,
Yeah.
like we have all over the city. And it's common sense that that is a good idea to fill the water area there coming right off of the highway. But in order to use the park, if we put in a stage or a pavilion there, or to create more usage, it's just a real problem trying to get around filling this part of the moat, I call it. I just wasn't expecting it to be this kind of money. And so if we don't do anything, then pretty much the Parker Park is mostly turns out to be a potty park and nothing else. Because we just can't expand any usage that you add to the park creates more parking problems, or will down the road if we're gonna have entertainment there or whatever. I don't know if there's a way to get around it. Obviously, there's not a way to get around it. It's frustrating to say the least.
Bill, I talked to Don about that several months ago, and he did not say that it couldn't be purchased. He didn't say that it was for sale, but he didn't say it couldn't be purchased.
Right.
And I'll be glad to ask him again.
Do you think it would be beneficial, I guess? I just threw it, I saw the
I
picture.
like that idea. I thought it had promise. When I saw the layout of the park, I thought it had promise to maybe look at that. I'm like Jerry, I'm not as shocked because I've been involved in it a little more in price. I'm not surprised that would be if it's, I guess that's also, Jeff, considering we're buying the field.
Correct.
This is purchased field.
Correct.
I mean, it's just an expensive venture to get that thing filled in. None of it's like. But I certainly can approach that subject with him and see if there's he did apply for a mobile home permit and for what was there before, and that's what he bought the property for, thinking he could put it there. So I'm not sure that he has any plans. It's sort of now that it's tucked in behind that condominium.
Maybe you'll donate it, it's a good tax write-off.
I think it'd be good to pursue it, if you wouldn't mind.
I'll be glad to.
You know,
I see him,
I mean,
I
it
see
can't
him
hurt.
routinely. I'll be glad to make him see if he wants to give us something in writing of what he's willing to do.
It can't hurt.
All right, I've got a couple, you got things?
I have one
Go
thing.
ahead.
Just update me on the airbrush hut. I don't know, is it 28th Street, 29th Street, I'm not sure, 98? And I know we sent a letter and it was up 5 days ago, and driving by, is he still in business, or what's the status on the airbrush hut? Or has he gone through all the procedure to planning and zoning and getting all his paperwork in, or what?
At this point, he is not. But the procedure we have to follow is that once that ticket was issued, which was 2 weeks ago this coming Thursday, that was the ticket in which it said you need to remove that within 5 days. Our LDR requires that we give people 30 days to appeal the citations. And so our attorney has advised us not to take that building until after the 30-day process is over. Once that's over, then we still have to get the special master to rule whether we need to take it or not, or whether him order the owner to move it and then take it off site and then do the proper procedures applying for development order.
So is it, I know that there's tractors and big trucks and trailers surrounding it. Is that still open for business? I don't know that. I'm just, if anybody in the city knows, are they still running a business out of it, or has he closed it but just leaving it there?
I got nothing.
Okay,
I've not seen it open.
okay. But it's just there, okay, and he hasn't turned in any paperwork to the...
At this point, he
planning-
has not.
Okay. All right, thanks.
I've got several weeks, maybe months, I don't know, time gets away. We discussed trash racks that were separated from their homes, especially those that are so visible along 98, that we were going to ourselves simply move them back by the house. And I see that we have not done that. Are we rethinking that?
Well, Nick had provided an ordinance that allows trash racks to be in the front. And at this point, the second reading hasn't occurred yet.
As to be in the front up next to the house,
Correct.
not out.
And it has,
Not out in the road, no, sir.
has to be approved, I think.
It's, they gotta go through the process of coming before the city council and getting the approval of the council.
But didn't we say we were just gonna move them back by the house?
I don't remember
No.
that we discussed it.
That was a conversation that the mayor had with staff, and we thought we were gonna consider it. But, because,
So we're gonna pass the ordinance that says, help me, just, I'm a little confused about the ordinance that's gonna bring it, this table then will decide,
yes, sir.
but is it gonna decide a location?
Yes, sir.
Oh, it will. It's gonna decide a location.
Correct. In other words, if somebody wants their trash in the front, they will have to make an application to the city, which will require a site map for your review. Doesn't have to be professionally done by an engineer, but it can be a sketch.
I thought we were gonna just, those that had been eased out, we were just gonna put them back.
Right, but doing that without their permission created a problem.
All right, did you get the list from the special events committee outlining their events?
I got their email this morning, Your Honor.
Okay.
I assume you did as well.
I did. The only reason I raised that question is after discussion with Nick last week, the way he and I, or what he relayed, which I think was, he had also spoken with you, that we just needed a list so that we would know that what was considered exempt was truly exempt. Does that satisfy what is required to exempt the special events committee?
Well, it's up to the council as to what satisfies it, of course. But in speaking with Nick, I did say they still need to fill the form out. You know, there's no cost or anything to do so because, you know, we as the city have no idea how big the event is. We don't know who's in charge. If it just happens and we don't know about it and there's an accident or something goes on, we don't know who to contact. So filling the form out.
Well, that's not what he said to me.
Okay.
He said to me that if it's exempt from the permit, it's exempt from the permit. And we just don't know which that it should be recommended. You're thinking that they should fill the form out, sign the form, and send it in.
Right. That way we know what's going on and what dates and everything. Because, you know, this list that we were given just says farmer's market once a month, Saturday and Sunday, gumbo cook-off, February, July 4th, obvious that's the date, music in the park in October, wine and art in October. But we don't know specifically which dates those are.
Well, and if they're covered, they would be covered then under our insurance, correct? And if we don't know the dates, how would you be able to contact the insurance and say, okay, this is what's happening this week? I'm assuming that's what you do. I might be wrong.
Well, it's a common thing when there's an event that's sponsored in part by the city.
Right.
We let our insurance company know that there's an exposure.
Okay.
And, you know, it's up to the CDC or the special events where they get their own insurance, but at least we're let our people know that there's a potential problem.
Well, if we have dates, both fire and police can at least look down the line, I would think, and start making preparations even before they're maybe even contacted to, so they know what they have to do in advance. It's kind of courtesy, I would guess.
So how far in advance is this required?
Well, if they're exempt, then this takes care of it.
If they're exempt, that means they don't have to do any paperwork with the city.
That's what the mayor's saying.
I don't agree with that. I think you at least need to know the dates and what's going on. I mean, was
They
it?
were gonna file that. They were gonna put it on the calendar. There's language in the permitting that they were concerned about signing, that they were accepting. Here's what I know.
Okay.
Here's what I know. When we started this permitting process, everyone at this table said, we do not want to affect the special events committee because of what they do and what the funds that they provide are city-oriented functions. That was a common theme
Yeah.
at this
Okay.
table.
I agree.
Okay.
Now, if that's not, so exempt to me meant exempt.
So you're telling me?
I don't mean the calendar. I don't mean not putting October, the second week in October, which is a commonly I think, accepted. I may be wrong about that, but I think it's the second week in October is defined as the Art and Wine Festival. I don't mean not giving us a date. I'm talking about signing or putting paperwork down that they're uncomfortable doing because we all said they're exempt.
Okay, let me ask a question then, Al. I think what I'm hearing from, and I feel, is we need to know and, kind of who, what, and where, and when, so the city can be ready. If the form we have that goes out is kind of for everyone, is there a possibility of creating an exempt form that takes away all these offending statements that, they're responsible for this or they're responsible for that?
I think that's simple. I think that's simple. That's my point was that their concern when they spoke to me was, look, you say we're exempt, but we really aren't. That's not what any of this is that you're asking us to do. If it's putting the event on the calendar, I want it to be user friendly. I don't want to separate ourselves from a group of people that give their time, energy, and effort to supporting the city. I don't want to do that.
I don't think any of us does, but I'd sure like to hear from them if they would like to, if they'd be willing to put something in so we know as a city that we can apply.
They said they were certainly willing to do that.
Well,
the date.
Well, what is the concern about filling out
A form.
the permit? Knowing, if we put these items in the ordinance, what is the concern about them filling out the permit?
Because it says
When
they're
it
responsible
states-
for all that stuff.
Well, in one part it says they're not, and the Art and Wine Festival, we wouldn't cover their insurance anyhow on that because
That's
that's on
Peggy's
private
property.
property.
Correct.
So that wouldn't be listed because that's on private property.
Well, typically what happens is that the week before the event, that's when we get contacted saying, are you going to have the fire department over here? Are you going to have the police over there? That sort of thing. We'd like to know a little bit more in advance than just the week or two before.
So you
And
could put it all on one page.
Put it all on one page. And I think it's an appropriate thing if we retool an application as suggested, which takes that liability language out, just have a 2-page form where it lists what you need. I think that's appropriate.
Then that's fine. That's not what I've never heard that. I thought we were dealing with the form as it exists. But to retool a form that exempts that language and all of those requirements, I think that's very acceptable.
Right, and I can work
think
with
that's-
Wiley and Sandy and get that, acceptable to
Okay.
everybody.
So are we then would that require an ordinance change?
I don't think it would.
I don't know.
No.
Good. All right, so that's in the making?
We'll get that done, yes, sir.
Okay. Jerry, you got anything?
Nope. Nope.
I mean miscellaneous? Okay.
You wanted to talk about, I don't want to bring it up, flag system.
Flag system
Yeah,
on the beach.
On the beach.
I think we can put that on the agenda for next time. But, that's, we've had one death here, so that's kind of unusual. I've never remembered it happening before, ever. But it's not very difficult to put flags up, 3 or 4 flags down the beach, if people understand what they're for. But I'd rather think about it.
Okay.
All right. Do we have a police report?
We do not. The chief was called away due to another emergency.
Same with the fire.
Correct.
Any comments from anyone about either of those from the staff? Okay. Public Works?
I've got a few things. I passed out when I first got here this colored sheet. Mr. Calhoun was not able to make it. They started a new job in Savannah, Georgia, but he did say that if I would have let him know today, as soon as we get out of this meeting, if you guys still want him to come up, he will make the necessary arrangements for the next meeting. As soon as we got through with our budget meeting last week, I reached out to Mr. Calhoun to talk about, to verify what we spoke about as far as getting all the work done in year one and then making monthly or yearly payments from then on out. As you can see, unfortunately, some of the numbers have changed. I want to jump down to the bottom of your page here at the last two bullet points at the bottom, where it says approximately $200,000 lump sum and a 1-year warranty. That is for the overcoat exterior. They're saying now that they can't do a 7-year or 6-year payment program. That would have to be a lump sum of $200,000. If you go back up to the top in your colored section there, that's the blasting, painting, all the repair work necessary to get the tower back to tip-top shape. That's a 6-year program at $80,000 a year. I do not know what the rate increase or what that would be to pay for something like that. And the other thing that I wanted to touch on under the sandblasting bid here is, if you look at the bottom of the bullet point below that, is no change orders. I spoke with him in depth about that, exactly what that means. What that means is if they come in and do the job, if we were to give them the job to come fix the water tower and they come in and do the work and they find, say, I don't know, the roof shot, it's not, but I'm just, as an example, they would eat that cost. The city wouldn't get a change order for $100,000 to fix that roof. They would eat that cost.
In other words, they're going to inspect it before they start any work, and we know exactly what it's going to cost, regardless of what happens after that.
Exactly. This number right here, if we accepted it, would not go up.
This number, which of these numbers?
The 80,000. Yes,
For
sir.
2019?
Yes, sir.
2020, 21.
Fiscal year 18, 19, so on and so forth. But those numbers would not go up.
So by doing this is basically an insurance policy in case, for some reason, we lose water from Panama City. We could provide water for our customers manually if we kept the...
If we lost our 18-inch water line from Bay County, or if our entire water system inside our plant were to go down, we could manually fill the tower and send that out into the system. If the tower were gone and the plant went down, we would lose that capability. We wouldn't be able to send water out into the system. Now, the plan here, it does transfer all maintenance and risk to that company during this period. They accept all liability for that tower during the 6-year period. They also do all the annual inspections required by DEP that we have to get done. And like I said, there would be no change orders if we chose to do this. I told him yesterday, I spoke to him late yesterday afternoon, that because of the numbers being changed at the last minute like it was, I couldn't guarantee him that.
Well, I may not follow your graph to help me. 2018, we owe him $80,000.
Fiscal year 18-19 would be 80,000.
And then 19-20, we owe him another
80, yes, sir.
80, we right on down the line.
Yes,
What's
sir.
just a $200,000 lump sum?
That would
That's to
be,
get him started.
no, sir, that would be if we chose to just say, hey, we want you to come in, wash it off, and put a paint job over top of what's already there.
That's not in addition to what
No,
these
sir.
graphs. Oh,
No, sir. That's a completely different option.
There's two options you have on the paper.
Yes, sir. Yes,
One
ma'am.
the
option
80,
and then
yeah.
the second option.
But that's more inclusive.
Right.
The 80,000 a year basically makes it a new tank.
It would take it down. Oh, and that price, before I forget, because I know we talked about this a while back, that does include the apron that would go, the curtain that would go completely around the tower in the event we did blast it. So we wouldn't have sand going everywhere. But yes, it would take it down to bare metal. They would repair all structural issues, the catwalk, the lattice on the legs, and some other stuff, and then repaint it with all brand new paint.
And so what does the 200,000 do?
$200,000 would be if we chose, let's call it option B.
Yeah.
If we said, we just want you to come in, hit it with a pressure washer and put paint over the old paint.
Well, that's useless, as far as I'm concerned. If you don't take it down the middle and get rid of all the rust, you're wasting your time.
And money.
So in 6 years, we sent close to
$480, I think.
$500,000.
Yes, sir.
$500,000.
A lot of money.
You know, in all these discussions, eventually, we all look at you.
The only option would be to raise the rate. It's all you can do in the waterfront.
Have you figured on what kind of rate increase? I see an advantage to having the water there. I mean, there's a tropical storm, it doesn't have to be a hurricane for us to lose power and everything else that might stop the water flow otherwise.
Could you have do we have to make that decision today?
A
No,
preliminary
ma'am.
guess, our preliminary guess is $4 a month per customer,
$4 a month.
per customer. $351.
Okay.
Let me ask you, does it make sense to put on the back of the water bill or put something out online? Give us your opinion about what you think about the water tower? I mean, how do you get a public survey? I mean,
We actually talked about that, because we thought it
I
would
don't know what it
be,
means we have to make that happen.
yeah.
It's hard. I know.
Yes, sir.
I know it is.
I can say that I've talked to a few boat captains and people that I know around town about it, and they would like to see it stay. They hate to see it go.
Well, it's always been a sentiment. I mean, this
Yes.
has come up before now. This isn't a new idea. It's new in terms of the volume of money that it
Yes, sir.
costs. But keeping the water tower has come up twice that I know of, and there was always a strong sentiment to keep it. Was it worth to keep it? That becomes
That's the question.
well, how about we just study it?
I've got some fillers out through a couple different companies, and I also was notified about a few other companies to reach out to talk about dismantling and taking out the water tower, to try to get a cost for that as well.
I mean, yeah, because taking it out is not cheap.
No, you're
I mean,
right.
just, you know, just
That's another 150
Yeah.
or something like that.
So we're talking about a $50 increase a year, basically. Well, okay.
Well,
I'm
you know, you
rounding it up.
mentioned the back of the water bill. If we're going to study it,
Well, half the people don't look at the back of the water bill.
No,
I know.
we don't have really a good,
No, we don't.
other than if we raise the rate $4,
We'll
get
hear.
a big turn, I tell you.
If the newspaper were here, we'd get it on TV and then we'd get a lot of,
You know, it doesn't matter if you're planning to do it, it
I
never
know.
is
They never
expected
show up,
until
I
you
know.
do it. That's when
I
you
know. I
find
know.
out that you shouldn't have done it.
I'll-
Philip, is there no other, I mean, is this our choice, company-wise? I mean.
That is our choice company-wise. We had one other company who they just could not seem to get their ducks in a row. And even as of last Friday, they were still asking questions, wanting more information. And this was the only company, we've actually been working with this company for the last 3 years. And the other company trying to get us a number and get us to this point.
So should we maybe just keep it on our agenda?
Well, I
do
think-
we,
Or
the
let it-
water bill, okay. Yeah.
Well, I think,
I'm talking about just.
Yeah, I hear you.
Just let it
Let people-
surface again.
Yeah,
Or
let
like
people-
Newberry puts it on their to-do list, you know, do we just put it out there again to say, okay, what is the condition of the tower? I mean, if we did nothing for 6 months, what would happen?
then the price would go up.
I don't believe anything would happen to it. I don't.
I mean, it's not like it's not in failure. mode?
No, it's not fixing to fall, no, sir.
No, I don't mean fall, but I mean, is it reliable? Can we still pumping water up there?
Sure,
with
absolutely,
the-
yes, sir. We use it every day.
Oh, I know, but I mean,
Well, why not put it on the agenda to discuss or possibly do some action
well,
next
at
meeting?
least on the agenda, there are people that do read the
Right.
agenda.
Yeah.
And they might come and say, hey, why are you doing this?
Well, the other thing is if we put it on the agenda, if we put a potential dollar figure in there, that may raise eyes enough for people to come in.
Hey, why don't you?
All the people
not that you
against it,
have
for
to,
sure.
Fine tune that number so that instead of around $4, is we do, and let's just put it on the agenda for, a discussion item. I don't have any really better.
I'd like to put it on the agenda. I hate to put things on the back burner because it seems like we do that quite often. And then 5 months later, we say, oh, well, we talked about this. I just assume put it on the agenda, make a decision
I agree with
one way or
that.
the other.
Yes.
Rather than,
Well, that would certainly be a change to make a quick decision.
Yeah, it would.
But,
There's
we'll
always
put it
hope.
on there, put it on there for next, just put it on there for 2 weeks. All right, what else?
Last Friday, we got a locate ticket in from Roberts and Roberts. There was some confusion about the locate ticket because it said locate from 6th Street to Boat Ramp Road. So I reached out to Roberts and Roberts to verify. We knew it was going to be 36th Street, then to Boat Ramp Road. But we clarified that, asked, since they got the locate in, what the hard date was for when they actually plan on starting paving. He said they don't have a hard date yet, but we do have a pre-con meeting tomorrow at 1:30 over in Panama about this project. So I'm hoping, I was told by Murphy Bridge Company and by Roberts and Roberts, I'll get those dates tomorrow.
Why not wait till after Labor Day now? And then all the traffic in the area goes way down.
That's completely up to DOT.
It's on the contract, Jerry, it's not.
Well, that figures that they're not gonna be cooperative with us.
Well, but I don't think personally, remember, that's not on highway, that's back there.
Well, that's true, but they have to pave the road too, all the way out to the highway, through where the trailers are.
Do you think today that they'll actually be ready before Labor Day?
That's a good point.
I mean, think about that. Think about it.
When the road does go in, though, I would like to request later on, it's not today, I'm not doing it today, but that we purchase some fill because that road itself is gonna take away quite a few parking spaces throughout that boat ramp. And we'd like to expand on the other side just to make up the difference, so that people still have plenty of room to park during the summertime.
They are leaving the road,
They will leave the road from 98 to where it comes in at the head of the boat ramp. Through the boat ramp and through the back will be taken out.
they'll take it out.
Yes, sir.
If they take it out, can we use that as fill?
You mean they're gonna pave that?
The asphalt?
Yeah, in other words, put it out there so you can put your boats on.
I'm pretty sure they're gonna wanna take their mill back, that's money. But we're gonna need to expand that boat ramp long before that mill or that asphalt
okay.
comes back out.
So they're gonna put asphalt down and they're gonna take it up.
It's a temporary road, yes, sir. But they can reuse it later on for another project.
I know, but would it be nice for them to leave the road?
It will be paid from Highway 98 into
to
the boat ramp.
Right. Okay, and then from the parking area where the trailers are parking, they're gonna take that up? Because it's not gonna be necessary to have it going through the woods after the bridge is built.
The road will go out. This is the boat ramp. The asphalt will stay up to here and all this will come out.
Okay, through where the parking area is
Yes,
now
sir.
will come out.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if
What else you got?
Spoke with DEP and with Jeff last week. We'll be capping next week those 2 wells that we drove on the Wallace Pump property. DEP requires that we cap them off, so we're going to be doing that next week. And also just an FYI. I will be sending out our response to you all before we send it to DEP, but we had a meeting with them last week before last? Last Monday. We got to get some things together as far as being compliant with what we're supposed to do in the eyes of DEP, but we should have that finished up today, and I'll send that out to you guys this week, what our response is. And that is all I have.
Clerk?
The only thing I have is, do you want the auditor to come present the audit formally at a meeting, or do you not want him to come? He is asking if he should be scheduling a time to come see you.
We have to pay him for that?
You pay him for the audit.
Wait, pardon?
You pay him for the audit, so it's part of the audit process. It is up to you.
We get a report, I don't know that we have to.
Compliments to you for a good audit.
Nothing.
Yes.
No findings, I thought it was well done. I may be the only one that read it, but it was certainly, I just have.
Late night reading.
I have a thing for that, I guess. But it was, our city is in very sound shape. And we seem to be keeping up with the areas that are. So I just want to say thank you for making sure that that's done and done in a way that the audit shows. I don't personally have a need, but I've been through several and they're not much to hear.
They're pretty boring. He listens, he spouts numbers, we call him.
I don't have a need.
Okay, so then we're good with what we have.
All right, we will meet with him in the next couple of weeks. That's all I have.
Questions for, back to Public Works, any comments or questions for Public Works? Forgot about that. Same for the clerk. Okay. City Administrator?
Just want to let everyone know that the police chief and public works director is working with FWC to clarify some signage for our no wake zone in the canal. We've had a lot of people who really aren't adhering to that, but before FWC can give tickets, there has to be some certain statutory language on the sign, so they're working with them to get that straightened out. We're looking into signage on Highway 98 about the proliferation of a lot of people passing on the right. There was a gentleman who called me the end of last week that was really concerned that somebody passed on the right and created a situation where his wife's skirt blew up because of the wind from a passing car on the right. Luckily it didn't blow up over her head, so we're all good. But nonetheless, that does tell you how close those vehicles come. And so we're looking at, can we improve signage or something for that? We don't want to get sign crazy and be one big sign, but we need to do something to let people know that you should not be doing that. Also, the police department's looking at increased patrol about golf carts. You would not believe the number of golf carts riding on the sidewalks.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe you would believe that.
Big increase.
And also not just sidewalks, but some are going on 98, and I've seen them try to cross over the 8th Street Canal Bridge, and there's not a golf cart lane there. So cars have to swerve out of the way for that. So the police is really working on trying to get that nipped in the bud before it becomes an accident. Also, it came to my attention yesterday, we have a fishing tournament this weekend. And, pending what happened with special events yesterday and everything, I reached out to Kimberly to ask if the CDC is affiliated with a fishing tournament this weekend. The answer is no. So if the event is not part of the special events or the CDC, then it's not exempt from the permit and the application. But here it is Tuesday before the event, starting on Thursday. Is this something, well, another question is, if you look at the flyer, it does have the Mexico Beach CDC logo by having participated in giving this organization some money. Is that enough of a crook to say it's part of it, or should we insist on the form?
Well,
and
if
all
they
that?
say no, then
Well, I'm trying to mitigate people getting mad.
But if we have a permit and it's been in effect, and all we're asking them to do is to fill it out, check if they need police, check if they need fire, all the other things, I think I have no problem with calling, having somebody from the city, giving them a call and saying, you have not filled out the permit. Perhaps you didn't realize we have one. Give them the benefit of the doubt.
And we're not going to place blame, no.
No, and can you have it in here by noon tomorrow? I think that that's within our limits. I think they absolutely have to fill it out.
Just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Who's in
Yeah.
charge? Is there an individual in charge?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
You apply at the marina is all I know.
I forgot, yeah. Little information goes a long way.
But I don't think it's a CDC event. I just know that they provide funds for them, but I would not have it go under a CDC event, absolutely not. But I do think that whoever's in charge needs to fill it out.
All right, we'll make contact with the marina and take it from there.
It's the MBARA fishing tournament, and not that they don't even know there's a permit application.
Oh, yes, they do, because Clayton is involved with MBARA, and he's on the CDC board, and we've talked about that. So, but it might be that he's not, but I would assume he is. But
We can make contact with Mr. Cox anyway, just to
Yeah.
make sure. All right, I was going to bring up the flag system thing, but we did speak about that earlier. Chief, I know you came in late because you had an emergency. We're going to talk about that in more detail at the next meeting. And that's all that I've got, but if the chief has anything he wants to bring up.
Yeah, here, you have anything, being we skipped over you? We covered that,
Earlier, so I was unable to attend, and I do apologize. I received an email of a visitor that came to Mexico Beach, and it went through the CDC, and it was forwarded up, and eventually I received a copy, and I spoke to the lady yesterday. She had a service animal that was jacketed with a vest indicating that it was a service animal. And a resident that is supposedly a full-time resident of Mexico Beach pretty much called her everything but a child of God while he spoke to her on the beach. There's got to be a little bit more consideration for the people that come here with service animals. I know a lot of the people have problems with service animals on the beach. This particular lady was at the Sea Oats, and there's supposedly video footage that I'm going to try to obtain because she wants to pursue charges.
Really?
Yes. There was other people present, 2 7-year-old grandchildren, and it supposedly got really nasty and out of hand. So, as a public safety issue, we need to give a little consideration. If this was one of our family members, a loved family member, grandmother, grandfather, just use some common sense. But anyway, that's something that's ongoing that came to my attention yesterday. I did speak to the lady. She was very distraught. We've had a busy weekend. We had an unfortunate incident yesterday where a person succumbed by drowning, but he did save his niece that was initially caught in the water. He went in, recovered her, saved her young life, but unfortunately he got overwhelmed by the water. So it was kind of a somber day yesterday, and we move on from that. But we do pass on our condolences to the family. And that's pretty much all I've got today. Just real busy over the weekend.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any announcements? Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Okay, thank everyone for coming.